Back when I ran my own fashion boutique, I used to spend weeks laboring on what I called the masterpiece. I'd curate the fabric, obsess over the silhouette, and place the finished outfit in the center of the display window, waiting for someone to fall in love with the exact vision. But reality had other plans. Time and again, a client would walk in, point to that masterpiece, and say, I love the texture, but can we do it in a navy blue? Or the embroidery is stunning. Can we strip away the rest of the pattern and just put that embroidery on a simple, elegant black sari? In those moments, I faced a choice. As a designer, I could have been rigid. I could have protected my original vision and lost the client. Or I could lean into the business reality as the blueprints for that embroidery were already done, the timeline was predictable, and the solution was sitting right in front of me. I stopped designing only what I wanted to create and started empathizing with the women standing in front of me. That shift, balancing a client's specific desire with the efficiency of my existing craft, changed everything. Fast forward to today, and I see the same struggle in the world of digital products. We sit in beautiful offices building masterpieces, but in total isolation. We make grand assumptions about what people need and ship polished solutions to problems that nobody actually has. We are still designing for the mannequin while the real user is asking for something entirely different. This talk is about fixing that gap. It's about stepping out of the display window and into a messy, constrained, and beautiful reality of our users. It's about learning to design within that reality, not despite it. But before we can bridge that gap, we have to look closely at the mistakes we are currently making in our design process. Here's what I see happening everywhere. Designers and product teams get lost in execution. You're designing beautiful things, but in a vacuum. You're making decisions based on assumptions. I think users want this without actually validating. You're building features stakeholders requested without asking if customers actually need them. And then by the time you ship, trends have shifted. The budget ran out, the timeline exploded. The tools you chose don't actually fit the problem. That's the reality gap. That dress was beautiful, but impractical. That feature is clever, but nobody uses it. We've all been there, isn't it? This isn't blame, it's recognition that the system pushes us toward this problem. Recognizing this problem is the first step, and it requires a fundamental shift in where we look for our inspiration. Stop looking only at your industry for signals. If you're a fintech designer and you only look at other banking apps, you're just moving the same pixels around a circle. You're inheriting their mistakes. Your customer isn't just your user. They are a person who just finished binge watching a show, just saw 1,000 ads, and just navigated a crowded retail store. Every single one of those experiences is a mirror. If you pay attention, the world is showing you in real time what people actually care about, what makes them tick, and what makes them scream in frustration. So if the industry itself isn't providing the right signals, where exactly should we be looking for the truth? To find that truth, we have to start looking everywhere else. It's about expanding our vision to find signals in the world all around us. I want you to start thinking like a detective, not a researcher. Think like you're solving a puzzle. Have that investigative mindset. A researcher looks at a report, a detective looks at the evidence left behind in the chaos of life. We are surrounded by a sea of best practices. Fashion designers look at legends, digital designers look at Mobin or Dribble for inspiration. But if you only look at your own industry, you are just trapped in the same feedback loop. You aren't finding signals, you are just following the crowd on the next busy road. To find a breakthrough like the insight behind a perfect black sari, you have to look where people are actually adjusting. Look at cinema and OTT. This isn't just Bollywood, it's a map of our changing aspirations. Look at the shift from the larger-than-life hero to the gritty, small-town entrepreneur stories on Prime or Netflix India. This tells you that your audience no longer wants perfect and untouchable design. They want relatability and hustle. If your UI feels like a cold Western corporate bank, but your user is in Shark Tank India mode, you've lost the connection. Look at advertising. From the high-stakes status of Tanishq ad to the middle-class logic of a Surf Excel campaign, Indian ads are a masterclass in psychology. When you see a demographic gravitating toward family-centric ads, your UX shouldn't just be for an individual. It should consider shared access or permissions for the household. We don't just buy products. We buy things that make us look good in our social circles. Finally, look at the messy reality of social media and WhatsApp. Forget the curated Instagram reels. Look at the WhatsApp forwards and the threads where people complain about anything and everything. Look at the memes about the frustration of OTPs or the struggle of wearing a heavy lehenga in 40-degree heat. That friction is your gold mine. The black sari wasn't a trend. It was a solution for the woman who needed to go from a 10 a.m. office meeting to a 7 p.m. Diwali party without a wardrobe malfunction or a 2-hour change. The answer to your design problem isn't in a Silicon Valley blog or a Parisian mood board. It's in the local train, the family WhatsApp group, and the cricket stadium too. Silk or software. It's just a different set of medium for the same task. We are bridging the gap between how a person dreams and how they actually live. If the bridge is beautiful but impossible to navigate, we've failed. True design is where high-end ambition meets everyday ease. When we finally bridge that gap between dreams and reality, we find that the lessons from different domains start to merge into a set of core principles. From all of my experiences in the cross-industry marathon, 5 principles emerge significantly. These apply whether you're designing a dress or an app. First rule. Before you touch pen to paper or open Figma, you must understand your reality. And I mean really understand it. I want to tell you about the 2 outfits that never existed. Back in my boutique, I spent 3 months pouring hard work into a 4-piece collection. In my head, it was a revolution. I had sketched these intricate architectural silhouettes with layered fabrics and hand-embroidered overlays. I could see them on the runway, I could see them on the clients, but I was designing in a dream world. When I finally stepped out of my sketchbook and into the workshop, reality hit me like a physical weight. First, there was the supply chain issue. I designed for a specific hand-woven fabric. I went to my suppliers and it didn't exist the yardage I needed. It was a classic sample room fantasy. Second was the craft itself. Those hand-embroidered overlays, they required a specific type of artisan stitch that my team, as talented as they were, had never been trained to do. And finally, another crucial issue was the ticking clock. To teach them that skill and find that fabric would have taken months I didn't have. I had spent 3 months of my time, my creative energy on 4 designs, but I could only manufacture 2. The other 2, they were perfect on paper, but they were impossible to build. They became what I call today the ghost collection. These sketches had been tucked away in my drawer, serving as a private masterclass. Those 3 months were a deep dive into my process, allowing me to refine my skills and gain deeper insight into my work. That's exactly what happens in digital. You want to build this incredible product, but you haven't asked, is this mobile or desktop, or both, or just a watch? That changes everything. What's our tech stack? Can we actually scale this? What's our actual deadline? Not the optimistic deadline, the real one. What's the actual budget and what does that eliminate? Until you've answered these questions, you're not designing, you are daydreaming. And daydreams don't ship. To help you avoid your own ghost collections, let's compare the realities of a physical boutique and a digital product, which are the 2 sides of the same coin. I realized that I needed a framework. I needed to stop guessing and start auditing reality. I started realizing that whether I was draping fabric or wireframing a user flow, I was asking the exact same questions. Now look at this list. On the left, we have the boutique. On the right, we have the digital product. In fashion, I had to ask, what are my materials? What is the budget for this textile? In digital, that's your tech stack capacity. Can your infrastructure support the weight of your iridescent design? In the boutique, I had to know, is this for a gala or a grocery run? What is the context of use? In tech, that's your device and platform. Is your user navigating this on a high-end desktop in a quiet office or on a cracked screen in a crowded subway? Then there's the scale. Am I making one bespoke outfit for one specific client, my black sari moment, remember? Or am I designing for mass production? In digital, are we building a niche internal tool or an interface that has to be intuitive for millions of people around the world with varying levels of digital literacy? Then we get to the how, the reality of the delivery. In my workshop, I had to audit my team's skill sets. If I design a complex embroidery, but no one on my floor can do that stitch, the design is a failure. In digital, if you design a 3D immersive micro interaction, but your team is optimized for lean, React-based web apps, you're just creating more ghost sketches. And finally, the quality check. The fitting process in fashion is your QA and testing in tech. If the garment doesn't fit the human body, the material doesn't matter. If the code doesn't work for the user, the pixels don't matter. So what's the lesson here? When you align these parallels, you get a clear roadmap. You stop designing collections that never ship. You start designing with the grain of reality, not against it. In fashion, this meant I could finally guarantee a delivery date. In digital, it means we stop shipping solutions to problems nobody has, and we start shipping products that actually work. Because a beautiful design that can't be built isn't design, it's just a ghost collection. Once we understand these parallels, we can stop seeing these practical limitations as things that hold us back. Stop thinking of constraints as obstacles. Start thinking of them as parameters. They are not problems to overcome. They are design guides. Limited budget, that forces prioritization. You can't have everything, so you ask, what's the core? What actually matters? Suddenly your design becomes sharper because you can't afford to be unclear. Limited timeline, that's clarity too. You can't do infinite iterations. You make better decisions faster because you know when the project ends. Limited tools or skills, that's forcing you to be creative within bounds. Some of the best design products I've seen came from teams with fewer resources, not more. The worst products, they came from unlimited budgets, unlimited timelines, and decision paralysis. Too much freedom breaks things. So constraints aren't limiting your design, they are directing it. They are forcing good decisions. Drawing another parallel here. In the boutique, when I was staring at a limited roll of fabric, I couldn't afford to be wasteful. I couldn't cut a complex 12-panel skirt if I only had 3 meters of silk. The constraint drove a color and texture focus. I had to pick the one shade and the one drape that was so undeniable, the silhouette didn't need to be loud to be loud. In fashion, you design for the weight of the fabric. In digital, you design for the flow of data. Think of your API as the material and your features as the embroidery. If your fabric is thin, that is limited API calls, it simply cannot support heavy, dense embroidery or features. For instance, if you design a feature that shows live delivery tracking, but your API only updates every 5 minutes, your design will lag, or rather tear. The user expects a smooth movement, but the material you're working with can only provide a static jump. You've designed a heavy feature on a fabric that can't support it. Then there's the budget. In my boutique, a limited budget meant I couldn't chase every passing trend that would be out by next season. I had to invest in high quality basics, the simple A-line dress, the basic t-shirt pieces that would last. In tech, a tight budget is your best friend if you use it to focus on the core user journey. You don't waste money on flashy micro interactions if the login flow is broken. You invest in the foundation because, like a good blazer, a solid core journey never goes out of style. And finally, let's talk about time. In fashion, limited time forces a sampling strategy. You don't sew 10 full dresses to see what works. You pin a muslin sample to a mannequin to prove the concept. In digital, limited dev time forces you to stop handcrafting every individual button and finally build that design system for reuse. You stop reinventing the wheel and you start building the car. These aren't just workarounds. This is how you get a clear picture of what actually matters. When you're forced to choose, you finally see your product for what it truly is. In fashion, these constraints led me to the black sari, a high-impact, reusable, reliable design. In digital, these same constraints lead us to products that are lean, fast, and solve the right problems. Don't wait for unlimited resources to do your best work. Use your limits to find your focus. Now you might be wondering, why is there a picture of a plane and a talk of my varied experiences? I'll get to that shortly. In aviation, every extra pound of weight costs fuel, and every unnecessary instrument creates cognitive load for the pilot. Pilots don't want more, they want accuracy. They want the shortest path between 2 points with the least amount of friction. This is the ultimate goal of designing with reality. Reduce rework. Stop cutting the fabric until you've measured the user's intent. Stop creating high-fidelity prototypes before you've validated the user's mental model. Reduce overthinking. Don't build a 747 when the user just needs to get across the street. Reduce overdoing. Stop adding complex micro-interactions for a single click when the user just needs to get to the next screen. My boutique days taught me that a product is like an aircraft. You can make it look stunning, but if the physics are wrong, it's going to hit the ground. We have to stop designing for the eyes and start designing for the gravity of real-world use. If it isn't functional, it isn't design, it's just an expensive art. Our products are the same. By embracing the constraints of our textiles and our tech stacks, we strip away the excess. Most project failure happens because we discover incompatibilities at the end. You ship something and then suddenly you realize, oh, we don't have the skill for this. Oh, the budget was wrong. Oh, the trend changed and now this looks dated. Why? Because we made compromises at step 100, not step 1. We designed without checking. We committed without confirming. Now imagine the plane that takes off without the pilots checking fuel, weather, or the runway. You're designing like that when you don't clarify constraints upfront. You're guaranteeing a crash. But when you understand compromises at step 1, we have 3 weeks, not 6. We have this budget, not more. Our team knows these tools, not those. Then this plane lands very smoothly. Everything aligns because you design with reality, not against it. Define before design. This sounds obvious, but almost nobody does it. Guilty. You get a brief, build an app. You just jump straight to design. But you never asked, what's the actual problem? Who has it? What context are they using this in? What does success look like? What are we not building? In fashion, this is the mood board and tech pack. You're not sketching yet, you're defining. What's the silhouette we're exploring? What's the color? What's the material? What are the price points? From that definition, sketches emerge naturally. In digital, it's wireframes and specs before pixel perfect design. You're defining what are the key flows, what's the information architecture, what interactions are required. From that clarity, UI emerges naturally. Without definition, you're operating on assumptions. With definition, you're operating on agreements. Teams move faster, decisions are cleaner, and rework drops dramatically. Getting alignment early saves months of work later. It's a gift, not a burden. Drawing another parallel here because this is where the vision meets execution. In my boutique, we didn't just start sewing. We used a mood board and a tech pack. The mood board captured the vibe, but the tech pack was the reality. We define the exact fabric GSM, the thread count, the button placement, and the production specs. Without that tech pack, the vibe was impossible to replicate or scale. In the digital world, we do the exact same thing. We just call it wireframes and design system. In digital design, a wireframe is the structural blueprint of a screen. In fashion, it acts as a muslin prototype. This skeleton is used to map out the user's journey or user's movement. The design system then serves as the tech pack containing the precise specifications and reusable components that guarantee every stitch is consistent and the final build is flawless. But here is the trap. In both industries, designers love the mood board, but they often ignore the tech pack. But if you don't define your specs with the same passion you used to define your aesthetic, you're back to creating ghost sketches. It's like you're handing a tailor a beautiful sketch, but forgetting to tell them how much fabric needs to go in the seam. Whether you're building an outfit or an interface, these documents are the bridge between a pretty idea and a shippable product. They ensure that what you imagined is actually what ends up in the user's hand. Fifth rule, and the last one, I promise. Test early, iterate often, learn continuously. You have an idea, your stakeholders nod to, you ship. And users don't use it the way you expected. Classic problem. Why? Because you tested it with people like you, not the people like your actual users. In a boutique, testing is everywhere. For example, you arrange the window display. A customer comes in and doesn't notice it. You rearrange, another customer spends 10 minutes looking. That's instant feedback. You adjust based on real behavior. In digital, you have to build that feedback loop intentionally. Pre-testing with stakeholders, then user testing with your actual audience, then wider testing to see patterns. If you aren't learning, your design is decaying. For instance, in fashion, you might launch a minimalist collection, but 6 months later, the cultural mood shifts toward maximalism because of a blockbuster movie or a massive wedding season. Then the whole collection becomes outdated. If you're still stuck on your launch day mood board, your inventory becomes a museum. In digital, you might design a perfect UPI flow, but then users start using voice search more than typing. And if you don't adapt your interface to support voice, you aren't clean, you are obsolete. Continuous learning isn't about chasing every tiny trend. It's about post-launch detective work. It's looking at the data 6 months in and asking, why are they skipping this step? Why are they using the app at 2 a.m.? Why is this sari being styled with sneakers instead of heels? But everything has its risk and balance. So what's the risk here? You ignore trends, hold on to the outdated design, it tanks. Or you chase every trend and lose coherence. Then what's the balance here? Build flexibility into your system. Design for adaptability, not for permanence. That way, when things shift, you evolve. You don't rework everything from scratch. Another parallel here where I want to talk about the things that never stay still. In both worlds, I observed we are running on the exact same treadmill of newness. In fashion, the cycle is relentless. Colors change one day, it's emerald green, and then the Pantone color of the year shifts suddenly, and your entire inventory feels dated. Patterns and silhouettes that were revolutionary 5 years ago eventually end up in a clearance bin. In digital, we face the exact same flux. UI trends migrate from skeuomorphism to flat design to glassmorphism. Our tools evolved from Photoshop to Sketch to Figma and now into the world of AI. Even our best practices are constantly rewritten as hardware improves and user patience shrink. But here is the secret I carried over from my boutique. While the look is constantly shifting, the human body it sits on stays the same. Whether you are sketching a dress or framing a product, you are working with the same core fundamentals. A sketch is a wireframe, assembly is UI construction, testing is testing. The medium changes, but the thinking is identical. What matters isn't the trend, it's the intentionality. Random lines don't create a dress, and random geometrical shapes don't create a product. But a purposeful combination of the two, that is where the magic happens. In tech, the look of your app will eventually feel old. The tools you use today will inevitably be replaced. But human psychology, the way people feel, how they process information, and the need for that black sari solution in a messy world, that is your only constant. Don't get so obsessed with chasing the Pantone of the year or the latest UI trend that you forget you are designing for a human being who just wants something that fits. By focusing on that human constant, we can finally master the 3 dimensions that determine whether a design will stand or fall. Great design is a balancing act of 3 specific dimensions. If you ignore even one, the whole structure collapses. Most designers focus heavily on desirability. Does the user want this part? But in my journey from the fitting room to the digital world, I've seen what happens when we lose our balance. If you don't anchor your vision in feasibility and viability, your work will eventually fail. Here is what it looks like when those dimensions fall out of alignment. Desirability, aka the assumption failure. This is when we ask, do they actually want this? But answer for ourselves instead of the user. In fashion, I once designed a structured avant-garde jacket with restrictive high collars. It looked stunning on the mannequin, but it was a disaster in real life. My client couldn't move their arm or drive a car. It was desirable to me as a creator, but it didn't resonate with the woman actually living her life. In digital, think of the Paytm soundbox. They could have built a complex app screen with transaction IDs and digital receipts. Instead, they built a box that just shouts out the amount. Why? Because a busy shopkeeper doesn't have time for a feature-rich dashboard. They just need to hear money has been received. That's the difference between designing for a pitch deck and designing for a person. Feasibility, aka the ghost failure. This is the reality check. Can we actually build this with what we have? In fashion, this was my ghost collection. I spent months dreaming up intricate hand-embroidered overlays only to realize my team only had the machinery for basic cotton stitching and not for the exquisite hand-woven limited stock of fabric. We had the vision, but we didn't have the stitch. The designs died in the sketchbook. In digital, this is the high-fidelity prototype that requires a custom-built engine or an API that doesn't exist. You spend weeks perfecting the iridescent silk of the UI only for the engineers to tell you that it's a 2-year build. A product that's desirable but impossible to build is just a fantasy. Viability, aka the burnout failure. Finally, we must ask, is it sustainable for the business? In fashion, I once produced a bespoke collection with hand-dyed patterns that became an instant hit. The customers loved them and the craft was beautiful, but the production was so labor-intensive and the material so specialized that the margins simply didn't exist. Business model-wise, it was unsustainable for repeat seasons. It's a reminder that if your masterpiece can't be replicated efficiently, you haven't designed a product, you've designed a one-off art piece. In digital, look at free forever startup tools that offer unlimited features with no part two revenue. It's buildable and people love it, but if it kills the business, it's short-sighted. What is the lesson here? A product that is buildable but nobody wants is a waste. A product people want but you can't build is a ghost. And product that works but is unsustainable is a failure. In my boutique, I found that the black sari was my sweet spot. It was desirable because of classic elegance, feasible because I had the fabric and the skill, and viable because it was profitable and fast to produce. In tech, we have to find our own black sari. We have to stop designing for just one dimension and start designing for the intersection where business meets user meets reality. Mastering this intersection is what transforms a pretty idea into an indispensable product that thrives in a messy world. But we often live in the expectations phase, the clean white space mockup or the flawless sketch. But your product doesn't exist to stay on a screen or a mannequin. It exists to hit the messy, unpredictable world. Great design ensures that when your idea hits reality, it lands firmly instead of shattering. It's the difference between a product that is interesting and a product that is indispensable. As we've seen through these parallels, great products are the ones that land, they don't crash. And the only way to ensure a smooth landing is to make sure your vision is grounded in three non-negotiables. I'll walk you through all of them. First is the economic compass. This is the reality of the bill. Every stitch, every line of code, and every pixel has a cost. If we don't design with an eye on the return, we are just dreaming on someone else's dime. A design only truly works when it creates more value than it consumes. It has to be self-sustaining. Second is the daily friction. This is the reality of the user's life. People don't wake up wanting to use our products. They wake up wanting to get things done. We have to look for the unspoken struggle, the thing they've just learned to live with. Our job is to walk into their messy reality and remove that one obstacle they didn't even realize could be gone. Third, being the material truth. This is the reality of the workshop. Every medium has a breaking point. You can't ask a fabric to do what metal does, and you can't ask a simple app to do what a supercomputer does. Designing with the grain of your materials instead of fighting them is what makes a product feel effortless rather than forced. When these three are in sync, you aren't just making something pretty or functional, you're creating a product that is sustainable, scalable, and most importantly, real. This intersection is where the black sari of the digital world lives. It's where your best, most impactful work happens. However, we often think the path to this success is paved with more resources when the truth is often the exact opposite. Over-resourcing doesn't guarantee success. Why? We often dream of the perfect project with an infinite budget and no deadlines. But let me tell you about the compromise paradox. In my boutique, when I had too much fabric and too much time, I didn't make a better dress. I made a confused one rather. I added more embroidery, more layers, more fluff because I could. The same thing happens in product. Feature creep happens faster with more resources. When the budget is high, the why not mentality takes over. We add features just because we have the capacity, not because the user needs them. No deadline pressure equals endless iteration. Without a launch date that is equivalent of a fashion show deadline, you never stop tweaking the hemline. You iterate until the original soul of the product is gone. More people equals more opinions equals slower decisions. In fashion, too many tailors in the room results in a garment with no clear silhouette. In tech, too many stakeholders turn a sleek app into a committee-designed mess where every screen feels like a compromise. Over-engineering creates brittle systems. In the boutique, adding too many structural tricks made a garment impossible to clean or repair. In code, over-engineering for every what-if scenario creates a system that is too fragile to update. So what's the lesson learned? Constraints are a gift. They protect the integrity of the design. They force you to be decisive. Sometimes the best way to save a product is to give it fewer resources, not more. This leads us to the ultimate crossroads, the practical trade-offs. In every project, you will be forced to choose a path. I've seen these three play out in my boutique, and they translate perfectly to the sprint. To choose wisely, you have to understand the specific impact of each compromise. So here are the three options. Option A, the quality compromise. This is trying to do too much with too little. You cut corners on the stitching to meet a deadline. The minute the user wears it, the seams rip off. In digital, you overshoot the budget trying to fix bugs you created by rushing. The result, the product fails because the foundation wasn't solid. Option B, the perfectionist trap. This is the refusal to compromise. You want every pixel and every thread to be perfect. You spend so long in the fitting room that by the time the garment is ready, the season has changed. In tech, if you wait for perfection, you launch a flawless product into a market that has already moved on to the next trend. It's outdated on arrival. Option C, the flexible ship. This is the sweet spot. You don't build a finished monument, you build a living product. You ship with flexibility. In fashion, this is like designing a dress with generous seam allowances or adjustable ties. It's built to be tailored as the wearer or the market changes. In digital, you build modular systems that allow for future updates without a total rebuild. Then what is the ideal option? You choose option C because it reduces rework costs. You aren't guessing the future, you're just making sure you're agile enough to meet it when it arrives. Land the product, then tailor it to the user. To wrap everything up, I've packaged these principles into the strategic stitch framework. Use it to bridge the gap between done and adaptable. This isn't just a list for designers or a checklist for product managers. It is a universal mindset for anyone building something that matters. Whether you're holding a needle or a mouse, the goal is the same: to create seamless experiences that actually fit the human they are designed for. If you open your eyes and look closely, you'll see that the world around you is constantly offering these lessons. You just have to be willing to see the parallel. The strategic stitch framework is to understand the reality and to stop designing in a vacuum. Define your constraints, your team skills, your timeline, and your budget upfront. You can't stitch silk with a stapler. Know your materials before you start. Know your user, look beyond your own industry. Study cross-industry research and behavioral patterns. Don't just design for a persona, design for actual human needs. Design with purpose. Aesthetics are the assumptions, but purpose is the soul. Ensure every single decision, every line of code, and every seam is tied back to a user or business goal. Test early and often. Don't wait for the runway or the launch date. Get your muslin version in front of stakeholders, users, and the wider audience. Iterate while it's still cheap to change. Ship and learn. Remember the practical trade-offs? Perfection is the enemy of the impactful. Shipped is the goal. A product in the user's hands is worth more than a masterpiece in your head. Evolve continuously. Trends change, tools upgrade, and the Pantone of the year will always shift. Stay flexible. Build modularly to reduce future rework so you can evolve alongside your users. The medium changes, the thinking is the same. Don't get distracted by the flashiness of new tools or the noise of temporary trends. Focus on the strategic stitch. Focus on the human. Because at the end of the day, whether it's a black sari or a banking app, people don't just want something that looks good. They want something that works for them. And here's a little template giveaway for such a lovely and patient audience. Thank you for your time.